All right, let's just jump right in. I want you to imagine something for a second. What if the power to shape our laws wasn't just held by a few hundred people in a distant building, but was right there, in your pocket? Today we're going to dig into a really fascinating concept, a grassroots app that's designed to bring direct democracy smack into the digital age.
So, take a look at this. This is the big idea we're unpacking. Every time a new bill gets debated, you could follow along, get a simple summary cooked up by AI, really educate yourself on it, and then cast an informed vote. It's a pretty bold vision for a whole new way of getting involved in how we're governed.
You know, this idea of direct democracy, it's not some brand new thing. Way back in ancient Greece, citizens literally voted on laws using black and white stones. So the real question here is, can our modern tech, our smartphones and AI, actually bring that ancient ideal back to life for the 21st century?
So, let's get into the dream scenario. How would you actually do this? How would you take the super complex, sometimes confusing machinery of government and make it so accessible that anyone could interact with it, right from the palm of their hand?
Now, the core promise here, and this is really important, is that this is not a government-issued tool. The whole idea is that it's a citizen-led, grassroots initiative. An app built by the people, for the people, with the goal of pulling back the curtain on politics and giving everyone a real voice.
Okay, so what would this feel like to use? How would it actually work in practice? Let's walk through the whole journey, from the moment you first hear about a new law to the moment you make your voice heard.
So it all starts with you tracking bills as they happen, in real time. But instead of having to read hundreds of pages of dense legal jargon, the app uses AI to give you the highlights. Of course, that raises its own question. Can you ever be sure the AI's summary is totally neutral? Anyway, before you can weigh in, you have to pass a quick little quiz to prove you actually get the basics. Then, you can simulate how your vote might affect things, you cast your non-binding vote, and finally, you get to see where the rest of the community stands.
And what's super interesting here is how these different concepts imagine the process. Both of these mock-ups, they share the same core DNA, right? It always starts with information, then it moves to education and some kind of test, then to a simulation, and only then do you get to the vote itself. The whole point is to make an informed decision, not just a gut reaction.
I mean, it's a pretty inspiring vision, isn't it? A more engaged, more informed, and more empowered population. It sounds almost flawless. But yeah, as with any huge idea, the devil is always, always in the details.
All right, now we get to the really hard part. This is where that beautiful, elegant dream of a democracy app starts to run into some messy, real-world problems.
First things first, and this is the biggest reality check of all. This app does not and cannot replace official government voting. What it creates is something called a community mandate. Basically, a really powerful way to measure public opinion. Think of it less like a voting booth and more like a will of the people thermometer. But don't underestimate that. If millions of informed citizens all point that thermometer in the same direction, that becomes a political force that's pretty hard for any politician to ignore.
And this is the million-dollar question, the real technical headache. We're all used to secure mobile banking on our phones, so you might think, why not mobile voting? Well, it's because voting has this unique, tricky paradox. You absolutely must prove who you are to prevent fraud, but your vote itself has to remain a total secret to prevent coercion.
And this just lays it out perfectly. It's this fundamental tug of war. On one side, you've got to guarantee that one person, one vote is real, to stop some troll farm from casting a million fake votes and swaying the result. But on the other side, the secret ballot is just as sacred. If someone can prove how you voted, they can bribe you for your vote, or even blackmail you.
Okay, now we get to what might be the most controversial part of this whole idea, the competence quiz. The thinking goes that to earn the right to vote on any specific issue, you first have to prove that you've done the reading and that you actually understand the basics of what you're voting on. Because even though it sounds good on paper, it is just loaded with potential problems. I mean, what's to stop people from just passing around the answers? And how can you be 100% sure that questions aren't written with a subtle bias, nudging people toward a certain conclusion? And couldn't this whole thing just become an unfair barrier for people who maybe aren't the strongest readers or just don't have hours of free time to study?
Okay, so yeah, we've pointed out some pretty huge challenges, but these aren't necessarily deal breakers. They're just really tough design problems that need some really clever solutions. So let's look at how this concept could evolve to actually tackle them. So how do you fix the quiz? Well, for starters, you don't just ask everyone the same 3 simple questions.
You build a huge, randomized bank of questions so that no two people get the exact same test. Then you make sure every single question is based on a direct quote or a piece of data from the source documents, no opinions. And maybe most critically, you're totally transparent about why each question was chosen in the first place.
You knew this was coming, right? Whenever you talk about digital security and voting online, somebody in the room is going to yell blockchain. It's often thrown around like it's the magic solution to everything. But is it, really? Well, the short answer is no. In fact, blockchain is a terrible tool for casting secret ballots. Its entire purpose is to create a permanent, public, unchangeable record. That is literally the opposite of what you want for a secret vote. But it's absolutely brilliant for other parts of this system, like proving the source articles that the AI summarized haven't been tampered with, or making the code behind the impact simulator totally transparent so anyone can audit it. So after digging through the dream, the tech, and all the challenges, we start to get a much clearer, much more realistic picture of what an app like this could and probably should be.
So let's just get one thing straight right off the bat. This is not about overthrowing or replacing our current system of government. It is not an alternative government, and it's not a legally binding voting machine. That's just not the point.
What it is, though, is something maybe even more interesting. It's a consequence simulator. If you've ever played the video game Democracy, it's kind of like that. Its greatest strength is letting regular citizens explore the potential ripple effects of new laws on the economy, on society, on the environment. It's an educational engine for making smarter decisions.
And that's really what it boils down to. This is its true identity. It's a community decision engine, a tool not for casting a legal vote, but for learning together, for simulating possible futures, and for building a real, informed consensus about the kind of society we actually want to live in.
And that leaves us with the final question, and this one is really for you. If you had a tool in your hand that lets you truly understand and simulate the impact of the laws being made in your name, would it change how you engage with politics? Would it make you a more informed, a more active citizen? The answer to that question could genuinely shape the future of democracy itself.